So when Jason Goes to Hell came out and they blew him up in the first 5 minutes, that was like, ever since that moment, Never Hike Alone was in my future, because I couldn't live with that. I was like, no, no, I was okay with everything up until then. Like, honestly, I was able to work my way through 7 and 8, and it still felt like the same Jason. It still felt like the same thing. It was just at part 9, it just took this curve. And I've always, my dream as a fan, I was like, I always wanted to see what happened if they didn't do that. And I'm friends with Adam Marcus, and I've come to like enjoy Jason Goes to Hell for what it is. It's just, I just want an opportunity to be like, okay, what happens if we go in this direction and we sort of follow what Never Hike Alone has followed? And it took Jason into sort of a more grounded and scary, I think, direction. It brought him back to sort of his roots about like, what is he really about? Stop telling stories about sort of odd situations that he finds himself in. But if you have an undead Jason and he hasn't been disturbed and he's been living in Crystal Lake for a long time, what type of world is set up there? That's the world I want to see. An undead Jason that's had time to like manipulate the camp and find a way to be just a complete ghost and hide and just keep people out. And if people come in, he can eliminate them and hide them and keep and like just sort of become like the perfect weapon of like what he was always growing to be, instead of like always being asleep, waking up, and then getting put right back down. And that was sort of, I wanted to get him out of that pattern like that, because that's what would Jason want? He would want to get out of that pattern. I mean, I can't imagine that like getting cut down every film was like enjoyable to him. And I'm sure that he wants to be reunited with his mother and he wants to recreate that sort of whatever he had in part 2. So that's sort of like what Kyle stumbles into, is the world he's rebuilt. This little cabin that like in the backstory of that was supposed to be where him and Pamela first lived when they first moved to Camp Crystal Lake, that there wasn't an apartment in town. There wasn't any room in the cabins because Jason couldn't stay with the kids and Jason couldn't stay with the other counselors. So they put them in the pantry above the kitchen. That's why we had that scene where he goes through the kitchen and goes up into the attic to find where he finds it. That was sort of like the backstory of like how that storyline came together, was that Jason recreated this space that was actually really special to him. It was the first time him and Pamela felt like they were at home at a place, that they had their own little place, and it was like in a pantry, but it was for them and people were nice to them for the first time. So he sort of like is trying to like, as brutal as Jason is, he's also trying to recapture like a lot of like childhood innocence of like where he wants to go back to before everything turned bloody.